holy moly, holy moly. If my phone goes flying halfway through this video, I will not be surprised. I won't be surprised because my tripod is hanging on for dear life. It's hanging on for dear life. So, hi and welcome to me talking about things I enjoy. And the very first thing that I'm going to make a video on ever is a Game of Thrones from the A Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin. I'm so excited. I've read the first book twice now. I have so much to say about it, and this is gonna be a very Trisha Paytas-esque style of video, and by that I mean I don't plan to do any editing because I don't want to. I don't care. I'm not doing this to get famous. I'm not doing this to get clout. I'm not doing this to get subscribers. If you like my opinions and you like what I'm talking about and you want to follow me, fantastic. Join, I guess. Listen to me talk for an hour. But if I'm being completely honest to the truest heart of my heart, I love making videos for me to force my cousin to watch, and a year from now, probably 6 months from now, watching it myself and being like, ha ha ha, oh, what a funny girl I am. That shit, it's a little egotistical, I know, but it gets a good hoot and holler out of me. I just remembered something I don't want to remember. Anyways, it gets a good hoot and a holler out of me. But yeah, so today we are talking about George R.R. Martin's A Game of Thrones. The book specifically. I would love to, at some point, talk about the show, because I have seen the show. I saw the show before I saw the book. I read the book. I read the book because I loved the show. I watched the show way out of the hype of the original series. I was too young for it. I remember a vague memory where I came into the living room and my dad was watching a scene with Cersei and Jaime, and he was like, "Get out!" And I was like, what is happening? They are brother and sister. And yeah, so long after the hype. So I kind of got to be outside of the realm of the show is fucking awful, which there's some issues, don't get me wrong, and one day would love to get into that, and I probably will. But we're talking about the first book. Yeah, I've read it twice. I read it because I was in love with the Hound from the show, and I wanted more content of him, and I've got more content of him, and I still it's iffy. I have a love-hate relationship with him because of George R.R. Martin. So let's just get into it. I'm going to start by going through the characters, and it's just free thought. This is not going to be a concise point. Maybe in the future, I don't know. But let's start with the very first character. I don't know who's the best character to start with, honestly. I think I'm going to start with kind of the character who has kind of the least amount in this book, which I think is, we're going to start with, that's kind of a tie between Sansa and Arya. I think we're going to start with Arya, actually, because I just don't think Arya has a lot in this book, and she's not really fully developed in this book. Not in a bad way, it's just her first introduction, and she's a baby in it. I love Arya. I think Arya is written incredibly well. I think for George R.R. Martin not being a girl or a young tomboy, I think that he writes one exceptionally well. Coming from a girl who grew up with brothers and was a bit of a tomboy, a lot of what Arya, her thoughts are and her opinions are, and the way she sees the world, I could definitely see myself being in the same category of her if I was in the same world she lived in. And so I think he does her just incredibly. He writes her so well. But that's really all you can kind of say about Arya in the first book. She's just like, I don't want to be a girl. I want to fight things and I want to stab people and I want to sword fight, Papa. And she does. That's all she does. And it's so good. So good. She's so good. I love Arya so much. So much. I think Arya's probably her standout chapter for me is Ed's death. I think it's just, I don't know. It's just I think it was a standout for me in the TV show, and so in her case it was a standout in the book as well, of how that scene is written and how heartbreaking that scene is. How heartbreaking that scene is. So heartbreaking. But yeah, that's all I have to say about Arya from in her first book. She's chill. I like her. She runs around. I like her a lot. Very, very cool girl. So let's talk about Sansa next. And we're going to hop right into the Hound, which I think is a great time. The Hound is my favorite character. The Hound is still my favorite character in the book, despite his issues, which this is just a George R.R. Martin issue in general. Which is Sansa is, I believe in the very first book, I believe she's 11. Yeah. And she's not very prominent in the first book, but very much the second book. She has a pretty, she has a, love story. Very heavy on the quotations, with the Hound, who they don't, describe his age, but he's an adult. He's, definitely, the way I interpret him is, mid to late 20s. That's my interpretation of how old the Hound is. He could be younger, he could be older, God forbid, but he's a grown man. And yeah, there's a lot of if she was any age older, I would eat it the fuck up. If she was at the least 17, at the least, I would eat it up. But she's not. She's 11. She's a baby. So it's really, and I'm not gonna, mince my words, it's pedophilic. It is. It really is. Especially in the second book. The first book it's not that heavy. There's one scene with her and the Hound. And again, if she was an adult, or at least a year or two being one, even though 18 is still pretty young, that scene with the Hound escorting her back to her room, and basically lore dumping on her and trauma dumping how he got all of his scars and shit, I would eat it. I would have ate it up. It's literally Beauty and the Beast. You can't tell me it's not. I do think that's what George R.R. Martin was going for. Sansa is supposed to be this beautiful, graceful, and also she's supposed to be untouched by the world so far. She lives in a fantasy. She does not know the realities of the world because she is a child. Not because she's a sheltered girl. She's a child. She lives in a whimsical land where fairies exist. She's a child. But in regards to her just as a character, she's very whimsical, she's very beautiful, she's very arrogant and lives in her own world, and she sees King's Landing, and she sees just the world in general as a fairy tale. And I think the Hound is definitely supposed to be the opposite of her. She loves knights, she loves royalty, she loves King's Landing, she loves tournaments. The Hound hates all of it. He especially knights. He fucking hates knights. Sansa loves knights. He hates them. He's just her antithesis. I think I said that right. Anyways, and so in a case where she's an adult, that's so perfect, he is someone where I would guess around the same age she was, or is, his world got shattered. His brother burned him, and he's lived a very, very long time, like, not living in this fantasy land of what the world is supposed to be like. And so I think when he sees Sansa as being so, like, sheltered and like untouched by the world, I think it upsets him. And I think this would have been a lot better of a story to go into if he wanted to keep Sansa the age she is, which I think absolutely fine. I think that it absolutely could have been a really great story of, which they did in the show. I think Sansa and the Hound's relationship in the show is a perfect example of the right way to have done their storyline. I think the Hound, I think they shouldn't have excluded that scene that explains the Hound's scars. I don't believe that's in the show. It's been a long time, but I'm almost certain that's not in the show. I think they should have kept that scene because I think it's a very important scene for their little story arc. But I think they do such a perfect job with her being so pure and unbroken, and him both resenting that in her, but also wanting to protect that for her. And you see him do that constantly. You see, like, the mercy he has for her when King Joffrey, like, drags her up to see her father's head on the walls of the castle. And he doesn't stop the king because he knows that would just make it worse for both of them. But he also tells her, like, just do what he says. He stops her from killing the king because it would be better, like, worse off for her if she did not succeed and things like that. I think that's such a compelling story or, like, aspect of their story, of this resenting her but also wanting to protect her and being a loyal dog. Like, that's his whole thing. That's why he's called the Hound. He's the Lannisters' loyal dog, and kind of going against them in these little ways for her benefit, in the ways he does. He still, lets her get hit, but he doesn't ever hit her. So I think it's really pretty disgusting that in the second book, which again, I'll go more into this once I reread it, that, their story strays from just that original concept. And so, but I really love Sansa in the first book. I deeply, deeply enjoy her chapters. I think she does she's a great reversal to Ed's version of King's Landing, which is, like, treacherous and full of traps and no trust in anyone, no loyalties, literally walking on eggshells, and then Sansa's is just complete, like beauty of, like, the tourneys and they're so gentlemanly and Knight Loras and yada 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 yada, Sir Loras the Flower Knight, and he gives me a rose. And yeah, and so I love her chapters. I loved her chapters. I think, honestly, her chapters in the first book were the chapters I looked forward to the most. Also because I'm someone who does, like, not necessarily as bad anymore, but, like, very early on in my teens and my, like, late youth, I was, like, hardcore on those maladaptive daydreams. Big time. I lived in a fantasy land constantly. So I think I relate to that side of her a lot. But yeah, Sansa's just great in the first book. So next I want to talk about Jon Snow. So a really cool thing that I found that I've really enjoyed on my second time reading these books. Now, mind you, I stopped at the second or the middle of the third, because I got into a relationship at the time, and that relationship kind of became my, like, top priority. I said that really weird. My top priority, and so I just never finished reading them, and I always wanted to, and so that's why I'm doing this. Okay, I'm finally going back to it. But where was I going with this? When I first read it, it was like hot off of the show. Like I was so into the show, so into the characters that I just wanted more content, which is something I do a lot when I enjoy content and I know there's literature of it. I read the literature because I love the characters so much. And so when I was reading the books, I pictured the actors. And I find this time, now that I'm reading it this time, I don't picture the actors as much. And I really picture the descriptions of these characters. Like, for example, going back to Arya, the actress, I don't remember her name, she's got a very short face. Not in a mean way. She's so cute. She really is. I don't mean that meanly. But her features, it's like mine as well. Her features are very compact. You know, it's very like, bink, bink, bink. It's all here. The way Arya is described is a longed face, like elongated features. She's got a longer face. They literally call her like horse face, as a mean nickname. So for me, I picture a little girl with a longer face. There's like a very specific image of Arya in my mind. And so the same thing kind of goes along with Jon Snow, because Jon in the TV show is a grown man. He's a man grown. There's not a single part of that show where you could convince me he's in his teens. No way. But the way that Jon is described in the books, it's more understandable. He's 14. I know for the TV show they aged everybody up, but he's still supposed to be like 17, 18. You can't convince me that man is fucking 18 years old. You can't. But anyways, he's 14. He's described very much as the, like, not to have that pun, but like the lone wolf, in the sense of like he is the outcast. All like they describe him compared to Robb, who is big and broad and tall and like auburn hair and like very attractive, and Jon is skinnier, a little shorter, black hair, looks, or I think it's brown or black. He's you know, he looks different from the rest of the Starks, for obvious reasons, but also besides Arya as well. But he's described as skinnier, lengthier. I think they at some point in the book say where Robb is strong and sure, Jon is quick and nimble. And I think that's a really good like example of Jon in my head now, is a lot thinner and, you know, a little bit like I'm sure the Tumblr girls would have gone wild if they got into Game of Thrones and there was less rape. But yeah. So I like Jon in the first book. I think throughout the books, I think Jon is, and I know Jon's a fan favorite in the show, and I always like Jon in the show, but I think his character becomes a lot more entertaining through the book because of his inner dialogue, which I do think you miss out a lot on in the show, of like, yeah, I know Jon doesn't like Catelyn. Yeah, I know that, you know, Jon feels like an outcast. Jon doesn't feel like a Stark. Yeah, but when I tell you the descriptions of the way he's feeling in his chapters are so much more enlightening, they are. And like a really good example is Bran is in bed. He's unconscious from the fall, and Jon's about to go to the wall, and he wants to say goodbye to his brother for the last time. And Catelyn is in there, and she's mad, like with grief. She's like a little crazy at the moment. And Catelyn is very, very cold and mean to Jon. And I think a really good example is he describes that the way he talks to her, the hatred in her eyes, it leads him to tears most times. You know, like he feels like he wants to cry, but he won't do it because he wants to say goodbye to his brother. In the show, I never kind of got that off of Jon, of the sorrow of what he feels from this woman, who I think he even says too, or at least I get the feeling of like, Catelyn is the only like motherly female figure he has in his life. He does not know who his mother is. Like his father will never talk about her. And so I do think that her words affect him deeply, deeply. And I don't think that that comes off as strongly in the show, but I think it comes off wonderfully in the books because of the way he's written. But yeah, I love John so much. I think John is a really honorable character, especially in this book, especially in the Starks, like the honorability of the way he befriends Tarly, the way he takes criticisms from his elders, and when they talk about his cruelty towards the other guys when he first joins the Wall, like things like that make him such a likable character, such a likable character. And so in the first book, I find John to be really entertaining. I find his chapters to be very entertaining. Yeah, overall, I really like John in the first book. So next, fan favorite, one of my favorites, Tyrion Lannister. I love Tyrion Lannister. I'm not the first, I'll never be the last. Tyrion Lannister. What a little kooky, smart guy. He does a front flip in the books, which always gets a good chuckle out of me because it's just like so fantasy novel. I don't know how else to explain it. Like the guy never does a flip in the show, but he did a flip in the book. It really cracked me up. I don't even know what part. That was like pretty early on, I think. I think it was at the Wall. No! It's like Jon's first time meeting Tyrion, and like Tyrion's like up somewhere. He's like on a tree or something, and he fucking somersaults down off the tree and like lands in front of Jon. And like also in the book, he constantly complains about his legs. So why he's doing gymnastics, I'll never know. But yeah, love that part. Gets a real hoot out of me. I love the way Tyrion is written. Not just because he's a well-written character and he's clever and but also just because the way George R. R. Martin, not George R. Martin, George R. R. Martin, I'm just gonna call him Martin, chooses to write Tyrion is incredibly fun to read. It's just how witty Tyrion is that it's just a blast to read his words. His like great examples is which these are like great quotes from the show too, but they're great quotes for a reason. All dwarfs are bastards in the eyes of their father. Great fucking line. It's such a good read. It is such a good read. All of his conversations with Jon are fantastic. Their relationship, though short-lived, is a great like relationship. He teaches a lot to Jon so quickly on. Another really great one is Bronn is woken up at this point. He, from Jon's request, he goes to kind of give some advice and see what he can do for Bran, and and he says something where he's like something cripple, and Bran goes, "I'm not a cripple," and he looks up at Bran and he goes, "Then I'm not a dwarf," and that shit is a bit funny. It's a little funny. It's a bit funny. It made me giggle. But yeah, I love Tyrion. I think this is gonna be a little... No, that's not true. I was gonna say, I feel like his capture with Catelyn was a little fillery, but it's not, because it introduces Lysa, it introduces Brom. I think it's a great show of what a powerful character Catelyn is. It introduces a lot into the story, so I actually take that back. It's not fillery. I think for me, I found the once they get to Lysa to be very interesting. I found the journey to why am I forgetting the name of the castle? I know it's something Aaron. The Airy. There it is, the Airy. I think I just found that a bit boring, but once they're in it and the whole battle and everything, pretty good, pretty entertaining. Oh, oh, the fucking dungeon, the dungeon in the Airy. Oh, so good, eerie, so good. I would be pooping. I would be pooping my pants. You put me in a freaking slanted dungeon with a open to the fucking depths, dude. Done. Pooping. And they even say too that that's just like they have different like slants. This is like stupid and not important, but I remember like reading it and I was like, Geneva Convention would not approve. Like, I don't know why I was thinking about how like inhumane that is. I was like, that's so inhumane. Why would they do that? Like, this story doesn't take place in like a dark medieval world. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? But the area in general, I think is a good time. I think the Erie is probably one of my favorite locations, at least in the first book so far, in the series so far. I just think it is described so beautifully with like Alyssa's tears, which is like the waterfall that comes down but it's so high up it never touches the like the valley below, and how it was like and this is another thing of like praising George R.R. Martin, of like the way he makes this world feel so alive and like vast, without like making it feel too preachy, you know, or like too much where I'm getting bored. Like this little short story of Alyssa's tears, of like her being a lady and all of her sons and her husband dying, and she never shed a tear once, and that it's called Alyssa's tears now because the gods have, as her, I'm guessing as her punishment, have cursed her to cry until her tears water the valley below, but they never do, and so she cries for quote unquote eternity. I think that's so beautiful. I think it's so beautiful. I think it's tragic. I think it's beautiful. It literally made me stop and like consider like the fairness of that story, of like, is her not crying like worth that punishment? Is like, what was the reasoning behind those like her not crying? It took me back, this is so stupid, but it took me back to this story. It was a Wendigoon video about like the most radiated man or something like that. It was a really great video, and they talked about how his family was visiting through this awful time for, you know, days and days and days, and how his wife never cried until after he died, because she wanted to be strength for him. And I don't know why it took me back to that, of like, maybe she wanted to be strong. And I think this is just great because it's a one-off thing. Nobody's thinking that deeply about it, but it made me think that deeply about it, and I thought it was a beautiful story. And they have statues in the Erie of Alyssa crying, and they talk about moss and the moon door, and like, I just think that the Erie sounds like a really beautiful castle, and like he builds the Erie up so well, and like the description of it, and also like the gates to get up there, like it's stuff like that where it's just like, it's just beautiful. And I'd have to rewatch the show now, but I don't think that they did the Erie justice for how beautifully it's described, because it is described beautifully. I've noticed in the second book, I think another great one for me is I think Pike is kind of really interestingly described, but I'll get into that at my next video. But yeah, I like Tyrion. I think Tyrion's really great in the first book. I think his chapters are great. We're going to talk about Dany soon. Not quite yet, but soon. And I'm going to circle back onto Tyrion on a very specific reason regarding Shae. I'm going to be pretty harsh about Daenerys towards George R.R. Martin and the way he chooses to write her, which I'm sure plenty of people have criticized it, but it deserves to be criticized. It really deserves to be criticized. But yeah, overall, I love Tyrion in the first book. I think Tyrion really shines in the second book. really shines in the second book, and so we'll talk more about him probably next video. But in the first, I like him. He's clever, he's interesting. I love his dynamics with his siblings and especially his father. But you know, that's not a huge part of the first book. So next we're going to talk about Catelyn. I have a lot to say about Catelyn. I know people say her name Caitlin. I like to say Catelyn because her name is Cat for short. I like to say Catelyn. Anyways, I fucking love Catelyn Stark. I love Catelyn Stark. I love Catelyn Stark. There's a lot of Catelyn hate out there. And I think that comes from her being a baddie. Were there things she did that are stupid? Yes. Specifically in the second book. Yes. But we'll talk about that in the next book. Speaking strictly from her in the first book, Catelyn is such a great character. She's such... For a man who does some strong injustice to some other female characters in this book, he also writes women very well. I give him a pretty decent props for the way he writes women, especially in regards to Catelyn. I think he for not being a mother writes a mother damn fucking well. I think he writes her so well. I think even in the second book, in some of the things she does in the second book, which we will talk about on that video, it makes sense within the realm of her character, of who she is, on her beliefs and what she believes is important. And you can see those things in the first book. After Ed is murdered, she is still on the side of making peace with the Lannisters because she values her children's lives. She will put that over revenge. She will put revenge over the lives of her living children. And I think that is understandable. I think in most cases, I would even argue, is more logical to some extent of I think this is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, but I see a lot of men hating Catelyn, and I think they consider her too emotional, and she makes these emotional, rash decisions. And of course, some of them are, but also continuing a war for the revenge of your father's death is pretty emotional. When in her case, she's saying, let's stop the bloodshed. You know, let's keep your sisters alive. Let's keep your brothers alive. Let's keep you alive. Let's keep half of the realm alive. That makes more sense if we're doing the fucking... if we're talking about what outweighs what, life outweighs vengeance. You know? So, and in regards to Catelyn and Jon Snow, I know a lot of people do not like Catelyn because of the way she treats Jon Snow. I think the way Catelyn treats Jon Snow is completely reasonable within the bounds of the world. If we want to talk about, which is an excuse a lot of people like to use, that's how it was back then. That's just how it was back then. Yeah, you're right. You know what it was like back then? Women did not have rights back then. Women were not ruling. In very, very, very rare cases were women ruling. Women were objects. Women were sold. Women were forced into marriages. Women were used to end wars. You know, things like that, to bind houses together. So when you are a woman who lives in a world where you have very little value outside of marriage, one of the things you do have, and very little women did, was a name. She was a lady from a high house. She was a Tully. So when you are married to a man and the only thing you have is the concept of children, of your children being true children or true borns into your family line because of your rank. So when your husband chooses to have a child with someone who is outside of that marriage, outside of that class, they become bastards because that child is not high ranking because it wasn't born from you. That's one of the only things they have, is the right to their children, the right to so to be upset with Catelyn because her husband cheated on her, and then to expect her to openly accept that child and to love that child and to make decisions, no, fuck that. Do I think she should have been as cruel to Jon as she was? Absolutely not. She definitely goes overboard. There's definitely times I feel for Jon, but do I understand where she's coming from? Absolutely. That is the only thing she has, power-wise. That is her only power in this world, is her name. To expect her to cater to a son from an affair? No. And the part where she says, like, if you're going to King's Landing, you're not taking Jon. Like, you're not keeping Jon here. I'm not taking care of your bastard. And he's like, well, I can't take him to court. He will be an outcast. And she's like, I don't care. You're not keeping him here. How could you be so cruel? Fuck you, bitch. Fuck you. Don't get me wrong. I know who Jon is. I know that Eddard was honorable throughout his life, and he never cheated on Catelyn, and that Jon is actually his nephew. I know that. But you know who doesn't? Catelyn. Catelyn doesn't know that. Because Ed won't tell her. Because he made a promise to his sister. He will not tell her. So she does not know that. You cannot blame a woman for the things she does not know. And I'm sorry, I stand with her. Is she cruel to Jon? Yes. Is some of it unnecessary? Yes. Do I think that it all stems from nothing and why is she being like this? No. It's the only thing she has. It's the only thing most women, high-birthed women, have in this world, not to mention the common folk. So shut up. She's a great written character. Her hatred towards Jon is completely understandable. Do I think it definitely should have been a little bit more directed at her husband? Absolutely. But again, what is she going to do? She can't leave. What is she going to do? Nothing. That's all she has. I stand with Catelyn. I understand her rage. And again, in the second book, she even has other things to state about Jon that I think makes her character even more developed. She's a great written character. She loves her children. She's so entertaining to read. I don't stand... If Catelyn has no fans, I am dead. I like her. I liked her in the show. I like her in the books. Eat it. So next, we're going to talk about Eddard. Surprisingly, well, that's not true. I love Eddard, actually. I do. That wasn't what I was going to say. I wasn't going to say I don't like him. I do like him. I think he's a good man. I think one thing I really like about him and his character is the fact that his best virtue is his worst virtue, which is his honor. Because he is so honorable, it leads to his death. Because he is so honorable, he allows his wife to be cruel to his nephew. Because he will not break vows that he has made. And it takes a very true kind of person to be that way, but it's also what undoes him in the end. And I think that's an incredibly interesting depiction for a character. I think I think George R.R. Martin does it very well. I have to plug in my phone, so I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. I was just thinking about how I'm gonna make a really great like thumbnail. Oh my god. Oh my god. That was awful. I'm gonna make such a good thumbnail, and I'm gonna like catfish all of you guys in the sense of like you're gonna think this is a really well put together video, and it's not. It's not. Anyways, we were talking about Edard. I rewatched my video while I was waiting for my phone to charge, just to kind of go over some of my points. Two things I wanted to say. It is not John's fault that Catelyn treats him the way she does. At all. It's not his fault. And I don't think I put that across of like, John does nothing. John is innocent. And in my opinion, the real villain is Ed. And again, through the fact of how honorable he is, that it is not necessarily, it is a wonderful virtue, and it's not a great virtue. It is both for him. His honor hurts the people around him. It hurts him. But does that mean that he should not be honorable? No, of course not. That's who he is as a person. That's what makes his character so interesting. But in regards to Catelyn, no, the way she treats John is not fair to John. And it's no fault of John. But I understand why Catelyn does it. And it does not make me dislike her. That's what my point was with Catelyn. I just felt like I needed to reword it because I don't think it came across right. So yeah, back to Eddard. Yeah, that's how I feel about Eddard's. I think why he's such an interesting character, because of where his honor takes him. I think it leads him to dumb decisions. And I think that's such an interesting thing of how much people criticize different characters for their decisions. But Eddard makes bad decisions for the sake of honor. He warns Cersei that he plans to out her to spare her life. That wasn't a smart thing to do. But it was the honorable thing to do. But it wasn't a smart decision. He just doesn't play the game, and I think that's such a great example of the first book. It's the Game of Thrones, and Eddard does not know how to play the game. The game was not meant for him. He was not meant for court. And Varys tells him that, you're too honorable. I think maybe it was actually Littlefinger who tells him that his honor is not the shield he thinks it is. It's not the armor he thinks it is. That his honor will get him killed. And I think George R.R. Martin does such a wonderful job of, he does something a lot of people don't do, and I would love to see more of taking the risks he takes when it comes to characters. Nobody is safe in this story, and I love that, and it cements it with Ed, because in any other story, and I know many people have made this point, but in any other story, Ed would be the main character. Ed would make it to the end. All of his honor and his goodness and his beliefs would take him to the end, and good will rule over bad. But that's not what happens, and it consistently doesn't happen in book 3. Consistently. This is not a realm where good wins over evil. In regards to Sansa, it is not a song. It's not a storybook. Often the bad people win, and I think that I wish more authors would take the risks that George R.R. Martin takes because of how compelling it is and how well he does it. I think killing off Eddard was the best thing he could have ever done. I think the story is so much better because of his death. Yeah. I think it's so, oh my God. I think it's so poetic that the one time excuse me, my nose is really plugged up. The one time that Eddard finally chooses to not be honorable, to lie, and to break vows he made to himself, he's punished for it. Which is when he says that Joffrey is the true king of the Seven Kingdoms, and then Joffrey cuts his head off. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because it's the one time that he puts his family above his honor because he wants to protect Arya and Sansa. It's the one time he's happy to spend the rest of his life on the wall if it means peace and it means his family is safe. And it means nothing. It would have meant just as much if he had kept his honor and told the truth. And I think that's so great. I think it's so great. I think that's such a great... I think it's great. I think it's great. And it's why these books are so fucking good. It is why I love them so much. But yeah, that's how I feel about Eddard. Rest in peace. Love you, King. Yeah, love him. Next, let's talk about Bran. I like Bran a lot. I think his story is really heartbreaking. Oh, there's something. The joke, I'm not laughing at Bran being like handy capable. That's not why I'm laughing. I just think that the line is really clever. It wasn't like, Bran, you can't use your legs anymore. I just think how quick-witted Tyrion is in that situation, and like in the situation he's in with like a hall of people and like an 8-year-old, and like that's his reply to the 8-year-old. It's more the situation that made me laugh. I wanted to make that very clear. I like Bran in the first book. I think his story is really heartbreaking. I don't know, he's just written well. I think Bran probably in the first 2 books is probably my least favorite character, not because for any like real reason, mostly just because I personally don't find his chapters that interesting. I think he's like besides Daenerys, he's the very magical side of the story, and obviously he's the big side of the White Walkers besides Jon, but that's mostly, the wildlings. But they're both, the White Walker side of the story. I think when it's like chapters about the Crow and everything, I think those are interesting. And my opinions might change, but the first one, his chapters were ones I kind of least looked forward to, because it was, I don't know, it's interesting, but it's not. I love Rickon. I remember when I first read the book, I didn't think much about Rickon, but I really love Rickon, and I really love Shaggy Dog. I think the concept of that is like so fun and really entertaining. There's one part of his chapter that actually like made me tear up, which is it's a little bit after Eddard dies, and both Bran and Rickon dream of a crow taking them down to the crypts, and he was talking to his father, and he doesn't like remember exactly what they talked about, but it seems like he comes clean about Lyanna, which is his sister, which is Jon. So they go down there to see if, because Bran's 8, to go see if Eddard's down and to show him that he's not. And they find Rickon down there, and Rickon says he has the same dream, and they're trying to get Rickon to come up, and Rickon's like, no, I'm waiting for father. He's gonna come home like he promised. Oh, that breaks my heart. It breaks my heart, I think, because I don't believe Ed's bones ever do get to Winterfell. I don't believe they do, at least not in the books, but I'll correct myself if I'm wrong. But the concept of like Eddard coming home, but coming home dead, I think is heartbreaking. Like he doesn't, from my knowledge, but the concept of like he will come home, but not alive. And I think that's heartbreaking. There's also, it goes into one of my really favorite parts about not the concept, but this part of the story of the beginning of the book is the last time that the family will ever be together. And it's the last time all of them will ever see their father again, except for Arya and Sansa. Obviously, their last time was in King's Landing. It will be the last time. Soon after will be the last time Bran and Rickon ever see their mother, their father, or their older brother. Yeah, it's just them leaving is the last time the girls will ever see their mother. It's the last time they'll ever see their brother. Yeah, it's heartbreaking, and I think it's beautiful. I think George does a really great job with foreshadowing. There's so much foreshadowing about the Lyanna reveal, which I don't believe happens until the 5th season. I don't know if it happens in the books or if it only happens in the show. I think it happens in the books, but I genuinely don't know. But like, there's so much foreshadowing for it, and I love like the dreams and the dire wolf with the deer's antler in its throat, which obviously is foreshadowing Rob's death. And I like how much the book emphasizes like, hey, this is not a good sign. You know, like they tell you, they're like, that's not a good sign. I like that. So there's a lot I like. I almost forgot about Daenerys. Let's buckle up. Let us buckle up. Daenerys chapters are very entertaining. She's so entertaining. I'm gonna be frank about it. The way George R.R. Martin writes Daenerys, not saying this is what he meant, not saying these are true to how he feels, but the way that he writes Daenerys is like his favorite little fantasy girl. Because she's 13 and he writes her so graphically. He has not one, it's not like it's a one-time thing where he's describing her genitals, but on 3 different occasions he describes someone perfuming genitals. I don't think we needed that 3 different times. I really don't. I don't think the 13-year-old girl getting her area perfumed needed to be taught 3 different times. I think 1 was fine and 1 was uncomfortable enough. The breasts I kind of let slide a little bit, you know. I think in some of the situations she was in that like they were understandable to be described. I think one of the really weird ones is her and Drogo having sex on the shore of the lake, and she like goes up to her ladies and they go like, oh, Khaleesi, you are with child, and she goes, I know. And it's Ren, I know. Her 14th birthday had just passed. It feels really gross to not just to talk about the fact that she's pregnant and have this, you know, I need to read about this child's, it's such a hard thing to talk about on YouTube, but talk about this underage girl's entrance in regards to Drogo, who's a grown man. It's just gross. It's hard to read. It's gross. And I had a coworker say this, and so when I'm talking about this, if you are watching this, this is not directed at you, because you're not the first person to make this argument. I've actually heard this argument quite a bit before. You just happened to make the same argument, and I'm telling you the same thing. So if you are watching this, this is not a direct. I'm not bringing this up because of you. It was always going to be brought up. But I know a lot of people online use the excuse of, well, that's just how it was back then. You're right. But you know what wasn't happening back then? Dragons weren't flying through the sky. White Walkers, frost zombies weren't running and killing people in the fucking forest. Winters didn't last 9 years. We're talking about a fantasy novel. So, yeah, it did happen back then. You're absolutely right. Did it need to happen in the fantasy novel? No. But to play devil's advocate, because one of the things I do love so much about Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire is that it is dark and it is realistic, and it is a realistic example of fantasy. So write it dark. Highlight the cruelty of it. Highlight the darkness of a 13-year-old girl being sold to a grown man for an army. And I said I was going to come back to this, when a 18-year-old hooker, like literally like a like, I'm going to use the term from the book, a literal whore, 18-year-old whore is being described less sexually than the 13-year-old girl, there's an issue. That's an issue. That's weird. You're putting a character in from any understandable circumstance to be sexualized would be the prostitute. But they don't sexualize her like he sexualizes Daenerys. I am a strong believer in the need for dark media. I don't believe that topics like what's it called? PDF file and grape. I hate using this stupid words. I don't care. I'm not even getting monetized. Pedophilia, rape, like molestation, like toxic relationships. I don't think that these should stay out of the public eye. I don't. I think that there is a place for art to be made around those topics. I just think that they should be done right. And I think if you're going to choose to do them in a way that is going to be an issue, then people are going to have thoughts about it. People are going to criticize it. I hate that excuse. That's how it was back then. It's a book. People don't like it. It makes a lot of people uncomfortable to read. It's written. It's out there. It's not changing. Nobody's suing George R.R. Martin, but people are allowed to have opinions on it. And you're fucking... I'm sorry. If you are like die hard, like taking it to the grave with you, it's fine. You're weird. That's weird. It's weird. If you are so adamant about it that you can't see that it's not well written, it's weird. It's weird. And I don't think that the time is a good excuse. I think that she could have been written and kept her the same age and kept some of those scenes and did it in a more appropriate way. I think you still could have had her falling in love with Drogo and still done that in an appropriate way, but you don't need graphic sex scenes of a 13-year-old girl. You just don't. It's not necessary. It's just not necessary. And I want to make a really good example of the first time Daenerys is with Drogo, she consents to it. And this is kind of a double-edged sword, because in one sense she's consenting, and it's not her, it's under her own choice, even though realistically she would not have a choice. And I think her Drogo putting out this option for a choice is very fantastical, because she's just been sold and married to a warlord. Realistically, she would not have a choice, and even if he didn't let her do it that time, at some point she would have had to, whether she wanted to or not. But I think so. It's a double-edged sword. It's kind of a nice thing that she consented to some extent for being a child. But if I'm going down this route of like the darkness of it, of showing the realism, I think he describes at one point that he's so rough with her that she cries most times he mounts her. I think that's a fine thing to write. I think the words like mounting, or instead of you talking about his hardness and his length and her wetness, and she's 13, if it's if it's things like that, I cry when he mounts me. That's fine. I can read that. I can understand. I don't need the graphic fucking detail. And so I think they could have done it. Could go both ways. I think they should have made it a little darker, and I think people could praise the show for doing that, but the show doesn't do that. Yeah, the first time they are together is just rape. There is no consent. It's not a loving scene, but they film. It's such a sexualizing scene of like her face up in the camera. My cousin made a really good point. Like her face in the camera, her breasts are like jiggling around. She's crying up close. That scene was fanfare. That was made for like gooners. It was made to turn people on. You can't. That was not like a brutal rape scene. There was no uncomfortability in it. Not for, I think, some of the viewers. I don't think it was made for that intention in mind. And so that's my biggest criticism of the first book, is the way he writes Daenerys. I think that's the only time I'm almost certain, except there's some really weird stuff with Jorah, with him like yearning for her, and I think it's gross. I think she's 13. I think it's really fucking gross. I think maybe you can get away with it a little bit more in the other books, because I believe like 15 or 16 is supposed to be like legal age back then. Legal, obviously there wasn't a legal age, but you were considered grown back then, so maybe that's a little easier. But again, I think if you're going to write relationships like that, and you're going to write about topics like that, there's a lot more grace that could have been done with it. There were, I don't think it was done well. I think it's, yeah. I don't care. I genuinely do not care what anyone's opinion is on, like, what, blah, 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 blah. It's just a time. Sensitive stuff, like, blah, 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 blah. Just say you like child rape. Just say it. Because that's what you're saying. This again is for the people who like hardcore, like die for it. Again, just in case my coworker watches this does not mean you. You said one thing and it was just like the end of conversation. You didn't fight for it. You've never even seen the show. I just want to make that very clear, just in case you watch this. This is not directed at you. You made one comment and I disagreed with you, and I told you why I thought that was not a good point, and then we moved on. So, but yeah, so for the people who are diehard 13-year-old Daenerys book fans, you're fucking weird. You're weird. It's really weird. But yeah, that's one thing for me. I just don't like that how that aspect of her story is written. Do I think Daenerys' story in the first book is one of the most entertaining aspects of the book? Absolutely. I think her relationship with her brother is so interesting. I think the foreshadowing of the eggs, and it's just great. Every time her chapters came on, it wasn't a drag. I really enjoyed it. I just got to her first chapter. I just got done with her first chapter in the second book, and I entertained it. I enjoyed it a lot. But yeah, no, it's yeah. But no, overall I like Dany in the first book. But that's probably my biggest griefs with the first book. But yeah, so thanks for watching. I don't really know what else to say. I like the direwolves. Obviously, we'll get into some other characters. I know I didn't go into Robb, but that's just because Robb is not a perspective in the first book, and in my opinion, he's not that important. Like, he's in the first book through Catelyn a lot, but I think he definitely has a lot more to do in the second and third book, and so I'm gonna wait to talk about him until my next video, just because it's just like, I am the Lord now, and I am going to war, and I'm the king in the north, and it's like, okay, that's like a really, really broad interpretation of his story, but in my heart, that's what it is. I am king? How do I do this? Yeah, that's Robb Stark in my mind. But yeah, thanks for watching. I guess a good thing to let you guys know, if you're writing a little heated comment, or if you already wrote it and you're hate watching now, if you disagree with anything I say, and you want to comment about it, if you do it with politeness and courtesy, and you write something that's like well written and open for interpretation and open for discussion, and with just basic human respect, there's a really high chance I'll read it, and there's a really, really high chance that I will try and see your perspective. Really high chance. I'm not really someone who lives in an echo chamber. If you make a good point about like certain pieces of art or literature or movies, and you make a fucking good point and it makes sense within the bounds of the story, and you have like, I'm not coming out here with receipts, obviously. This is just stuff that's on my mind. I couldn't quote like what page, what passage, you know. But if you can, and you think some of my opinions are not good or are wrong, I'll read that. But if you are mad and you're gonna write a little like pissy, like, boo-hoo, woe is me, you don't fucking agree with the thing I agree with my favorite show or book, like, okay, cry me a river, and I'm not reading it. I'll read the first sentence, and then I'll laugh at you, and I'll spit, and then I'll move on. That's how I feel about that. If you can't come and have a discussion respectfully, like, I'm just not gonna read it. I don't care. I respect, like, people who are polite and smart. That's it. Yeah, I don't really listen to Wow Wow Babies, so, but yeah, thanks for watching.